The Cartel de los Soles has not disappeared. Contrary to what many believed after the capture of the dictator in January, the most powerful criminal organization ever to operate from within the Venezuelan state simply shed its skin like a venomous snake. And now it has new visible heads, Diosdado Cabello Rondon and Vladimir Padrino Lopez. Recent FBI investigations confirm that Venezuelan state-sponsored drug trafficking continues operating at massive scale, moving tons of cocaine through entirely redesigned corridors to evade detection. But here comes the truly unsettling part. Encrypted chats discovered by French authorities reveal that a Venezuelan general, Rodrigo Guerrero Contreras, has been directly negotiating with Colombian cartel bosses to open new international drug trafficking routes into Europe. And in one of those messages, a devastating phrase appears. The third in command of Venezuela, after Diosdado Cabello, wants to work with us and is offering us coverage in very good water. Stay until the end, because what you are about to discover will not only leave you speechless, but will explain exactly why the United States has not ruled out executing a second precision military operation on Venezuelan soil. Many believed that Operation Absolute Resolution, carried out in the early hours of January 3rd, would be a singular, unrepeatable event. The extraction of the dictator from Miraflores looked like the fatal blow to the criminal system that for over 2 decades had looted Venezuela while converting it into a platform for international drug trafficking. The United States and the free world celebrated that military achievement as an epic victory against narco-terrorism. However, reality is demonstrating something that the history of organized crime has taught repeatedly. When the head of a cartel falls, the power does not disappear. It fragments, redistributes, mutates. And that is precisely what is happening in Venezuela right now. An investigation published by Insight Crime confirms that the Cartel de los Soles never depended exclusively on the dictator's figure. It was, and continues to be, a decentralized network deeply woven into Venezuela's military structures. Before, there was one visible head concentrating political and criminal power. Now there are multiple heads, each controlling specific segments of the multi-billion-dollar drug trafficking business. The most compelling proof, cocaine continues flowing by the ton from Venezuela toward international markets, using corridors completely redesigned to evade American surveillance. But the story does not end there, because what comes next reveals how this criminal organization reinvented itself to survive the most intense military pressure it has ever faced. Operation Lanza del Sur, cataloged by the Pentagon as the largest counter-narcotics offensive in the Western Hemisphere, has destroyed dozens of vessels belonging to criminal networks in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The old maritime corridors that for years served as safe highways for drug trafficking have now become high-risk zones. The United States has those routes completely blockaded with advanced surveillance technology, naval destroyers, and unprecedented international cooperation. So how does the Cartel de los Soles respond to this crushing pressure? With criminal adaptation. Venezuelan drug traffickers have fallen back on their old land-based alliances, exploiting porous borders that are practically impossible to fully control. The first renewed route is the invisible frontier between Colombia and Venezuela. Clandestine trails through the Catatumbo, the Guajira, and Apure, where drugs cross on foot using human mules, evading radar entirely. Thousands of secret paths that no satellite can completely monitor. The second criminal artery is the Amazonian route into Brazil, impenetrable jungles, treacherous rivers connecting southern Venezuela directly to Brazilian ports, from where cocaine travels to Africa, Europe, and North America. But the most audacious strategy of the renovated cartel involves invisible flights, small propeller aircraft taking off from improvised airstrips in the middle of nowhere, nighttime low-altitude flights evading conventional radar, bound for Central America. Each flight carries relatively small quantities, but multiplied across hundreds of monthly operations, they represent hundreds of millions of dollars in annual profit. Drug trafficking has become smarter, harder to detect, and behind this sophisticated criminal operation stand the same names as always: Vladimir Padrino Lopez, who continues occupying the position of Minister of Defense, controls Venezuela's armed forces in their entirety. He is the guarantor that the military structure does not fracture, the strongman maintaining institutional cohesion, and according to intelligence analysts, the protector of drug trafficking routes. Diosdado Cabello Rondon, Minister of Interior Relations, Justice and Peace, dominates the police, intelligence services, and the prison system. Within Chavismo, he is practically untouchable. His influence since the dictator's fall has not diminished. On the contrary, it has expanded. Here, a political paradox emerges that defines the current moment. The United States needs these men to dismantle what they themselves built, but that cooperation has an expiration date. In recent weeks, we have seen a Diosdado Cabello unusually conciliatory, more diplomatic in meetings with high-level American representatives. Both Cabello and Padrino are figures that the interim administration considers reluctantly necessary, indispensable in the short term, but dangerous in the long term. The American strategy appears clear. Use them temporarily to disarm the criminal networks they themselves operated, but eventually collect the pending debts. That is why it comes as no surprise that advanced surveillance aircraft, F-35s and P-8 Poseidons, are constantly overflying Venezuelan territory. Washington is watching every move. Do you believe Diosdado Cabello and Vladimir Padrino should be prosecuted immediately? Or should the United States allow them to remain in power temporarily to dismantle the Cartel de los Soles from within? Leave your opinion in the comments, because this debate defines Venezuela's immediate future. Now, why do these criminals keep taking risks after Operation Absolute Resolution? The answer is brutally simple: money. Drug trafficking is one of the most lucrative businesses on the planet. 1 kilogram of cocaine in the Colombian Venezuelan jungle can cost between $1,000 and $2,000. That same kilogram delivered in Europe is worth between $30,000 and $50,000. We are talking about a value multiplication of 20 to 30 times. That is why no military operation can completely eradicate drug trafficking without attacking the root of the problem: global demand and the structures of state corruption. The recent visit of General Richardson, head of the U.S. Southern Command, to Caracas had one central objective: pressure the interim regime to allow full cooperation on security matters. Washington needs intelligence access, authorization for joint operations, and the dismantling of military protection networks for drug trafficking. Within this context sits the historic shield of the Americas Summit, where 12 countries of the hemisphere committed to executing coordinated operations against transnational criminal organizations. The Cartel de los Soles and all its associated networks have been officially put on notice. But the real message is this: removing one head has never been enough, because criminal systems always generate successors. This is where a name unknown to the general public appears: Major General Rodrigo Guerrero Contreras. Intelligence sources indicate that this officer has risen through positions within the military apparatus in recent years, linked to extremely sensitive areas related to resource control within the armed forces. But the real scandal emerges when his name appears in FBI files connected to two high-profile Colombian drug traffickers, John Henry Gonzalez, known as Medio Labio, and Pablo Felipe Prada, alias Blackjack, key operators of criminal networks moving cocaine into Europe. Forensic investigators from the French police managed to decrypt encrypted chats between these traffickers, where the Venezuelan officer is directly mentioned inside a plan to open a new international route. According to those intercepted messages, the scheme involves a departure from Puerto Carreño in Colombia, crossing Venezuelan territory under military protection, terminating at European ports. In one of those messages appears the phrase I mentioned at the opening: "Talk to the hairy one. Tell him the third in command of Venezuela after Diosdado Cabello wants to work with us and is offering us coverage in very good water." That single sentence summarizes with raw clarity the logic of Venezuelan organized crime, high-ranking officers negotiating protection in exchange for multi-million-dollar percentages. The finding was shared with Colombia's Attorney General, the FBI, and the DEA. This investigation connects directly to an old accusation, the existence of the Cartel de los Soles, informally named after the rank insignia worn by Venezuelan generals. This system has been described as an institutional protection network for drug trafficking operations embedded within the state apparatus. However, recent judicial documents describe it less as a traditional hierarchical cartel and more as a clientelist system within state elites. This complicates formal charges because it is legally difficult to prove that a monolithic criminal structure exists, and precisely that complexity is what makes this organization so dangerous and so difficult to eradicate. Now let us connect the pieces of the puzzle. The investigation into Alex Saab, the businessman identified for years as the regime's principal financial operator, has gained new momentum. Barely 10 days after Operation Absolute Resolution, federal agencies began asking very specific questions about the financial networks Saab managed. And those questions lead directly to figures within the Venezuelan high military command. If Saab decides to cooperate with justice, what could emerge is not simply another corruption case. It would be a complete X-ray of how power truly functioned behind Chavismo. The inquiries into General Guerrero Contreras, the chats discovered in Europe, the investigation into Saab, all of it appears to form part of the same strategic movement, fully dismantling the financial and criminal networks that sustained Chavismo. But here, the great political unknown of the moment surfaces. If investigations advance toward figures like Diosdado Cabello and Vladimir Padrino, what will the United States do? That question defines not only the future of those criminals, but the immediate political future of an entire country. Now let us talk about another scandal that demonstrates exactly how far Chavista corruption reached. Venezuelan baseball converted into an international laundromat for dirty money. Between 2017 and 2019, $27 million flowed from PDVSA and Bandies, supposedly to sponsor the Venezuelan Professional Baseball League. But that money never went directly to local accounts. The path led first through Portugal, then landed in Bulgaria, and finally dispersed across the world like confetti at a criminal party. The epicenter was Investbank AD, a Bulgarian bank where the league held a sub-account controlled by a German attorney named Stefan. This individual was not a baseball fan. He was the architect of a network that laundered 500 million euros of Venezuelan public funds. The money arrived from Novo Banco in Portugal. From there, it traveled to Bulgaria, where Stefan pulled the strings like an expert puppeteer. Did you know about this money laundering scheme through Venezuelan baseball? Or is this the first time you are hearing about this scandal? Tell me in the comments whether this surprises you or whether nothing surprises you anymore when it comes to Chavismo. Of those 27 million deposited, 19.4 million euros exited in suspicious transfers toward shell companies scattered across the globe. The United Kingdom, Barbados, Italy, the British Virgin Islands, Panama, Serbia, Dubai. Corporate names like Crossbar Effects Limited, Training the Stars Ltd, Locking Capital Limited, many dissolved immediately after receiving the transfers. How convenient. Some companies were linked to known baseball figures. Carlos Guillen, former Major League player, received funds through 360 Sports USA. Humberto Oropesa, president of the Cardenales de Lara, whose company Producciones y Espectáculos VIP received millions that subsequently flew towards Switzerland. The original contracts included $10 million from PDVSA in 2017, signed by Eulogio Del Pino, who ultimately ended up imprisoned for corruption. All of this money was managed by Swiss Latam AG, a firm registered in Liechtenstein that charged commissions of 4.25%. While the Venezuelan people suffered blackouts and shortages, those millions were being used for international payments that had nothing to do with sport. The league shields itself behind confidentiality to avoid providing details. From Punto de Quiebra al Minuto, we advocate for full transparency or nothing. This is not just a theft from baseball. It is an assault on the sporting soul of Venezuela. The sport that should unite families was converted into a channel for laundering dirty money, and those are the same people who today speak of forgiveness and reconciliation. But recent movements of American military aircraft over Venezuela suggest that Washington has not finished settling its accounts. This past Sunday at 1 p.m. Caracas time, a C-146A Wolfhound departed from San Juan, Puerto Rico, belonging to the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command. This is not an ordinary aircraft. These planes form part of the logistical architecture of special operations. Transport of sensitive personnel, movement of classified equipment, medical evacuations, and transfer of high-value detainees. The call sign was Magma 80. For anyone who follows American military operations, that name sounds anything but casual. While that plane advanced toward Venezuela, there was another simultaneous movement, a State Department flight with code State 73 heading from Florida toward Curaçao. In recent diplomatic missions, the State Department has followed exactly the same pattern. First Curaçao, then Caracas, return to Curaçao, back to the United States. This is not tourism, it is standard operating procedure. Curaçao functions as an advanced platform where strategy is refined, intelligence is validated, and results are consolidated. At 1:50 p.m. on Sunday, State 73 touched down in Curaçao. Almost an hour later, at 2:58, the Wolfhound landed in Maiquetía. The Special Operations Aircraft's mission on Venezuelan territory lasted barely 1 hour and 20 minutes. By 4:10 p.m., it was already departing again. An extremely fast operation, perhaps too fast for conventional logistical missions. What kind of mission enters a country, stays just over an hour, and immediately withdraws? Instead of returning directly to Puerto Rico, Magma 88 changed its route and flew toward Curaçao, exactly where the State Department aircraft had landed hours earlier. At 4:50 p.m., it touched down on the island, remained on the ground for 1 hour, and at 5:50 departed for San Juan. Mission apparently completed. When one observes these movements within the current political context, connecting the dots becomes inevitable. Since the dictator's capture, the power board in Caracas has entered accelerated reconfiguration. Washington maintains unprecedented judicial pressure while sectors of Chavismo attempt to survive a process that is dismantling the power structure that dominated the country for more than 2 decades. When a political structure begins to fall, the signals do not always appear in official speeches. Sometimes they appear on radar screens. And while these operations unfold, there is another front of battle: the war for control of the narrative. Since late February, an avalanche of supposedly informational videos began flooding Venezuelan screens on YouTube. These are not spontaneous viral pieces. They are paid advertisements designed to look like real news. As of March 13th, these videos had accumulated more than 32 million views. To understand the magnitude, in 2025, there were 24 million Venezuelans with internet access. This means that campaign would have reached every user in the country more than once. But what the public sees does not arrive through informational relevance. It arrives because someone is paying astronomical sums to place it there. Pure propaganda. An investigation revealed that behind it exists a network of at least 14 YouTube channels distributing 55 repetitive videos under the appearance of 19 different news outlets. The names change: Nación Argentina, Colombia Actual, Mexico and Datos, Continental Report, United Data News, and several others. The objective is to simulate spontaneous international coverage, but those outlets do not exist. They are false editorial identities. The central node is called Hispan Online. 13 of the 14 channels were created in less than 2 weeks, between February 18th and March 1st, a classic pattern of coordinated digital influence operations. The videos are marked as unlisted, a function that allows them to remain hidden from the public while continuing to circulate through paid advertising. Have any of these fake announcements promoting the interim government appeared in your feed? Tell me in the comments whether you have seen this propaganda and what you thought. The content is not designed for people to search for it. It is designed to appear inevitably. The investigation traced the ads through Google's Transparency Center, where all of them appear linked to FG Medio Sociedad Anónima, an agency registered in Buenos Aires. The company has not responded to questions about this campaign. In none of the 55 videos does the captured dictator or Celia Flores appear. Their capture is not mentioned. There is no resistance rhetoric. Everything simply disappeared from the narrative. In its place, another story emerges. A Venezuela that has supposedly recovered international recognition, an economy growing, a country talking about reconciliation. That leadership has a name, Delcy Rodriguez. The videos repeat three narratives: that several countries recognize Delcy, false; that the Venezuelan economy is growing, questionable; and that the country is advancing toward national reconciliation, partially true but manipulated. To reinforce credibility, they show real screenshots from outlets like Reuters, France 24, Infobay, El País, and CNN. References to 76 different websites appear. The presenters are not journalists either. They are actors and models based in Argentina with experience in voiceover or dubbing, capable of imitating Latin American accents. This is propaganda designed with far greater sophistication than anything Chavismo used during its years of power. For more than 2 decades, Chavista power controlled television and radio. Today, that control no longer guarantees dominance of the narrative. The informational battlefield has shifted to digital platforms where propaganda is no longer imposed by shutting down media, but by purchasing visibility within algorithms. The real question is not whether this campaign is propaganda, because it obviously is. The true question is, who is financing an operation that reached tens of millions of views, attempting to convince the country that a new political normality is underway? When a power needs to pay for its narrative to appear in front of every citizen, it does not demonstrate strength. It reveals profound weakness. Finally, let us talk about the sanctions, because there is a judicial document that speaks more clearly than 100 political speeches. The American prosecution made something absolutely clear. Sanctions against the Venezuelan state apparatus remain fully intact even after the recognition of Delcy Rodriguez. I repeat, the sanctions remain in place. Diplomacy is one thing. Money is something entirely different. The dictator's defense attempted to have his attorneys paid with Venezuelan state funds, arguing that blocking that money violates his constitutional right. The American government responded categorically, "You can pay your defense, but not with regime money, only with your own money." On January 9th, OFAC mistakenly issued a license permitting the use of regime funds to pay for the legal defense. That authorization lasted less than 3 hours before being revoked when the administrative error was detected. The defense attempted to exploit that momentary gap to retain expensive attorneys, but the prosecution closed that door. The message was demolishing. The dictator can pay for his defense with his own money. The judicial document acknowledges that he has personal funds outside Venezuela, almost certainly ill-gotten, given that officially he earned 2 minimum wages. If he wants expensive lawyers, he will have to use resources that, according to investigations, exist dispersed across offshore accounts. Otherwise, there is always the option of a public defender. The truly important aspect is not just the legal dispute, it is the political signal from Washington. The recognition of the interim leader as political authority does not mean the Venezuelan state has ceased being a sanctioned entity. The financial wall remains standing as an instrument of pressure on the regime attempting to reorganize itself after the dictator's fall. The objective, according to the American government, is to use that sanctions regime to force improvements in the future of the Venezuelan people. Washington separated 2 planes that for years were intertwined: the political transition being constructed and the criminal responsibility of those who directed the system under investigation. The message is unambiguous: not diplomatic recognition, not oil market movements, not political changes have brought down the financial wall surrounding the former regime. The dictator and his wife remain detained in a federal prison in New York, facing charges that include conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism. Their next hearing is scheduled for Thursday, March 26th. Get ready, because when that day arrives, the questions will be historic. And we will be here to cover it. Because while they attempt to rewrite history with million-dollar propaganda, we will continue telling you the truth without filters. Venezuela has waited a long time to see this moment. If anything is indicated by the movements of recent weeks, it is that the pieces of the chessboard are falling one by one. The Cartel de los Soles may have mutated. It may be operating under new criminal strategies, but the international pressure is not letting up. Federal investigations are advancing, cooperation between countries is deepening, and the days of impunity for these criminals are numbered. Diosdado Cabello, Vladimir Padrino, General Guerrero Contreras, Alex Saab, and everyone who participated in looting Venezuela while converting it into a narco state. Their time is running out. They may be negotiating today from positions of apparent power. They may temporarily be considered necessary. But justice has a long memory, and the United States does not forget. The looted baseball funds, the millions laundered in Bulgarian banks, the chats discovered in France, the military flights landing at Maiquetía, the million-dollar propaganda attempting to legitimize the interim government, the sanctions intact, all of it forms part of the same puzzle. The final dismantling of a criminal system that for too long called itself a government. That is why, from Punto de Quiebra al Minuto, we will remain vigilant, continue investigating, and keep telling you the truth, even if they try to hide it with millions in fake advertising, because you deserve to know what is really happening, who the responsible parties are, and what future awaits us. I leave you with one final question to reflect on. Do you believe the United States will execute a second military operation in Venezuela to capture the leaders of the Cartel de los Soles? Or will it prefer to continue with this strategy of gradual pressure? Your opinion matters, because together we are building the real narrative of what is happening. I am Laura Salazar, and this is Punto de Quiebra al Minuto. We will see you in the next analysis, because this is only just beginning. Until soon.